Imagine. It's 2035. You're walking through the outskirts of Stuttgart, maybe Wolfsburg. The air feels wrong. Too quiet. No rumble of machinery. No smell of metal and oil. You pass a massive industrial complex. Steel and glass stretching toward the sky like a cathedral. This used to be where the future was built. Where the Made in Germany stamp was forged. A stamp that was basically a license to print money. But today? The lights are off. The machinery is cold. The only sound is wind whistling through broken windows. Sounds like bad cyberpunk fiction, right? Some Netflix series nobody asked for. Except here's what should keep you up at night. This isn't fiction. This is a mathematical probability accelerating every single day. For decades we worshipped the German engineer. They were the stoic gods of precision. They gave us the Porsche 911, the Autobahn, and industrial machinery so perfect it made Swiss watches look like cheap knockoffs. They were untouchable. The master race of manufacturing. Relax, I'm talking about economics here. But right now, at this exact moment, a silent catastrophe is ripping apart the foundation of Europe's economic engine. We're not talking about a recession. We're talking about the potential extinction of a specific kind of intellect. In this video we're going to dissect the brutal hidden crisis turning the German engineer from a global asset into a legacy liability. We're talking about arrogance, energy suicide, demographic collapse, and a stubborn refusal to accept that the world has fundamentally changed. So grab your coffee. Maybe a schnapps if you're German. Because we need to talk about how the gold standard turned into rust. Let's start with a word you've probably never heard. A word that perfectly captures why the German car industry is staring into the abyss. Spaltmaß. In English, panel gap. The distance between two body panels on a car. Where your door meets the frame. Where the hood kisses the fender. For the last 50 years, German engineers have been absolutely obsessed, borderline erotically obsessed, with minimizing this gap. Billions of euros. Millions of man-hours. Decades of institutional knowledge. All to ensure the gap between your hood and fender was consistent to the micrometer. If you sat in an Audi in 2010, it felt like a bank vault. That's substantial. Worth every cent. That Spaltmaß was the visual signature of superiority. It screamed, we care more than the Japanese. More than the Americans. More than anyone. But here's the dark irony. While German engineers were obsessing over millimeter-perfect door hinges, Silicon Valley and Shenzhen were rewriting what a car actually is. See, you think of a car as a mechanical object. A German engineer sees a car as a combustion engine with seats bolted on. But the market, the actual buying public, now sees a car as a smartphone on wheels. Let me give you a case study that should haunt every boardroom in Munich. The Volkswagen Carrier disaster. A few years back, VW woke up and realized, oh shit. Tesla is eating our lunch because their software actually works. So VW did what Germans do best. They threw money and Germanic organizational structure at the problem. They created a software division called Carrier. Hired thousands of engineers. Billions invested. The goal? Build a proprietary operating system that would crush Tesla and Google. The result? An absolute, soul-crushing, humiliating catastrophe. The launch of the ID.3, VW's big electric hope, was a nightmare. Thousands of cars rolled off the assembly line in Zwickau. Beautiful cars. Perfect Spaltmaß. Museum-quality panel gaps. But they couldn't be delivered. What? Because the software didn't work. They were literally producing $40,000 bricks with wheels. Cars that looked perfect but had the functionality of a very expensive paperweight. VW had to rent massive parking lots to store tens of thousands of brand new vehicles. Mechanically flawless. Digitally brain-dead. Eventually, and this is the part that should make you wince, they had to send teams with laptops walking from car to car. In the rain. Manually flashing firmware updates. Because the over-the-air update architecture wasn't ready. Can you imagine the humiliation? That's the equivalent of Apple selling you an iPhone and then sending a guy to your house to install iOS with a floppy disk. This stems from a fundamental cultural misunderstanding. German engineering culture is built on hierarchy and perfectionism. You plan for 5 years. You measure twice, cut once. You release a perfect product. Software development is the complete opposite. It's move fast and break things. It's beta testing in production. It's shipping a product that's 80% done and patching it later. The German mindset cannot compute this. To a classical German mechanical engineer, releasing beta software feels like moral failure. Like showing up to a black tie event in sweatpants. So while they're perfecting the tactile feel of the volume knob, getting the exact resistance and click just right, Chinese manufacturers like BYD and NIO are shipping cars with massive touchscreens, AI assistance, and seamless smartphone integration. Cars that cost half as much. The hidden crisis here? The skill set of the German engineer, mechanical perfection, is becoming a commodity. Nobody cares about your perfect panel gap if the infotainment system lags for 3 seconds every time you try to change a song. The value chain has shifted from hardware to software. And Germany is bringing a caliper to a coding hackathon. Quick question for you: when you buy a car today, what matters more? The build quality and the feel of the buttons? Or the tech in the screen? Drop a comment. Are you Team Spaltmus or Team iPad? Let's pivot from technology to basic economics. If you run a factory, you need 3 things: raw materials, labor, and energy. If any one of those becomes too expensive, you die. Simple math. For the last 20 years, the entire German economic model, the Wirtschaftswunder 2.0, was based on one fragile equation: high-tech exports powered by cheap Russian gas. It was a beautiful scam while it lasted. Germany built pipelines directly to Russia, Nord Stream 1 and 2, bypassing all the annoying geopolitical middlemen. They gorged themselves on cheap energy. This allowed companies like BASF, ThyssenKrupp, and Bayer to run massive chemical and steel plants at competitive prices, even with high German wages. Then came February 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. The pipelines get blown up. By whom? We're not going down that rabbit hole today. And suddenly, the entire German business model evaporated overnight. Let's look at BASF, the largest chemical producer in the world. Their Ludwigshafen site is effectively a city. It consumes as much energy as all of Switzerland. When gas prices spiked in 2022, BASF's energy bill didn't just go up. It went vertical. So what does a rational company do? They leave. BASF is now permanently downsizing in Europe, cutting jobs, shutting down ammonia plants, moving investment to where? China. They're building a $10 billion complex in Zhanjiang. Think about the implications. The German chemical industry is the bedrock of everything else. You need chemicals for plastics, fertilizers, pharmaceuticals, car parts. If the primary industry leaves, the entire supply chain fractures. But it gets worse. It's not just that Russian gas is gone. It's that Germany's own energy policy is, how do I put this diplomatically, completely schizophrenic. In the middle of an energy crisis, Germany decided to shut down their last 3 remaining nuclear power plants. Yes, you heard that correctly. While France is building new reactors and the US is looking at small modular reactors, Germany, driven by a decades-old fear of nuclear energy from the 1980s Green Movement, turned off reliable, carbon-free baseload power. So now German engineers are facing electricity prices that are 2 to 3 times higher than their counterparts in Texas or Guangzhou. Imagine you're a mid-sized German manufacturer making specialized ball bearings. You're competing with a guy in Ohio. His monthly energy bill is $10,000. Yours is $35,000. It doesn't matter how brilliant your engineering is. It doesn't matter if your ball bearings are 1% rounder. The math doesn't work. You're dead before you start. This is leading to what economists dryly call deindustrialization. It's not that factories are exploding in dramatic fashion. It's a slow bleed. Investment decisions not being made. New production lines going to South Carolina or Hungary instead of Bavaria. The German engineer isn't obsolete here because they forgot how to build. They're obsolete because the ground beneath their feet has become too expensive to stand on. They're the best chefs in the world, but someone set the kitchen on fire to save money on rent. And we haven't even talked about who's going to replace these engineers when they retire. Because that's a horror story all on its own. If energy prices are the gunshot wound to the chest, this next point is the slow-acting poison in the water supply. It's boring. It's statistical. And it is absolutely lethal. Demographics. Let me paint you a picture. Meet Hans. Hans is a senior mechanical engineer at a Mittelstand company in Baden-Württemberg. He's 58 years old. He can look at a schematic for a hydraulic pump and tell you within 3 seconds why it will fail in 6 months. Hans carries 40 years of tribal knowledge in his head. He knows why they switched suppliers in 1998. He remembers the specific quirk of the milling machine in Hall 3. He can hear when something's wrong just from the sound. In 5 years, Hans retires. And here's the crisis. There is nobody to replace Hans. Germany is currently facing a demographic cliff that makes the Grand Canyon look like a pothole. The country is already short over 209,000 STEM workers. But the projections? Genuinely terrifying. By 2030, nearly 3.9 million skilled workers across all sectors will vanish into retirement. You might say, well, just hire young graduates. What graduates? Germany has one of the lowest birth rates in the developed world. They had 1 million 20-year-olds a decade ago. Today? About 800,000. And shrinking. The babies they did make 20 years ago? They're not studying mechanical engineering like their grandfathers. They want to be influencers. Or they're going into social sciences. Or if they're genuinely talented, they're moving to Zurich or Silicon Valley where the pay is double and the taxes are half. This is textbook brain drain. Let's look at the math. A top-tier engineer at BMW in Munich might make 85,000 to 100,000 euros a year. After Germany's punishing taxes and social contributions, they take home maybe 55,000. That same engineer can move to the United States, work for Nvidia or Tesla, and make $250,000 with lower taxes and stock options. Why would the best stay for the currywurst? The result is a hollowing out of competence. Walk into a German engineering firm today and what do you see? A lot of gray hair. The old guard. The Hansies of the world. But look at the junior desks. They're either empty or filled with people who lack proper mentorship because the mentors are too busy putting out fires caused by the staff shortage. We're witnessing the loss of institutional memory. When Hans walks out that door for the last time, he takes 40 years of problem-solving capability with him. That isn't something you can download from a cloud server or teach in a 2-week onboarding seminar. German engineering was never just about technical specs. It was about a culture of apprenticeship. Master and apprentice. That chain is breaking. The master is leaving. And the apprentice is currently on TikTok complaining about work-life balance. Here's another data point that should terrify you. First-year enrollment in mechanical engineering has dropped by 45% over a decade. Nearly 16,000 fewer engineering students. And among those who do enroll, the dropout rate is 50%. What? The curriculum is brutal. The first year is dominated by advanced mathematics that wasn't properly taught in secondary schools. Many students hit that wall and quit. So you have fewer students entering. Half of them leave. And the ones who graduate often leave the country for better opportunities. Question for the engineers watching. Are you seeing this brain drain in your industry? Are the senior people leaving with nobody to fill their shoes? Let me know in the comments if you're the Hans or the panicked junior left behind. If you think I'm joking about fax machines, I promise you I am not. We live in an era of AI, quantum computing, and blockchain. Yet the German administrative state, the infrastructure these engineers rely on, is stuck in 1995. Here's a story that sounds like satire but is documented fact. During the height of the pandemic in 2020 to 2021, German health departments were tracking COVID infection rates. How did they send this critical, time-sensitive data from local labs to the central government in Berlin? They faxed it. They literally printed out spreadsheets, walked to a fax machine and dialed a number. Sometimes the machines ran out of paper. Sometimes the lines were busy. Sometimes, I shit you not, the fax machine was just broken. This is the country that invented the automobile and the MP3 format. And they were fighting a biological war with thermal paper. This obsession with paper and process is choking innovation. In Germany there's a word, bureaucracy, about cutting red tape. Politicians promise it every election cycle. And every year the rulebook gets thicker. Let's look at Tesla's Gigafactory in Berlin. When Elon Musk decided to build a factory in Germany, he thought, great. German engineering. German efficiency. This'll be smooth. He ran headfirst into the German Planning Commission. The factory was delayed for months. What? Hibernating snakes and sand lizards. I'm not making this up. Local environmental groups and bureaucratic processes halted a multi-billion-euro project that would employ thousands because they needed to relocate specific populations of ants and lizards. Now, protecting nature is important. But the process was absurd. There were public hearings where citizens could complain about the smell of paint before the factory was even built. Water usage permits took another year. Musk famously laughed in a meeting when someone told him this. He just said, "This is insane. Compare this to China." In Shanghai, Tesla went from empty field to producing cars in 11 months. In Germany, it took almost that long just to get preliminary permits stamped. For a German engineer, this is soul-crushing. You want to innovate? Fill out Form A38. Wait 6 weeks. Oh, you used the wrong font size? Rejected. Resubmit. This creates a culture of risk aversion. Why try something new if the paperwork is a nightmare? Why launch a startup if Germany's bankruptcy laws treat you like a criminal for failing? In Silicon Valley, failure is a badge of honor. I blew up 3 companies, learned tons, now fund my 4th. In Germany, if you go bankrupt, you're stigmatized. You're damaged goods. Banks won't touch you. So engineers play it safe. They refine the diesel engine for the 50th time instead of inventing the hydrogen fuel cell. They optimize the door handle instead of rethinking transportation. The bureaucracy doesn't just slow things down. It sterilizes the imagination. This is where the scary music should start. Because everything we've discussed so far, the software failures, the energy crisis, the demographics, the bureaucracy, those are self-inflicted wounds. But while Germany was busy shooting itself in the foot, a predator entered the room. For 30 years, the relationship between Germany and China was simple: teacher and student. Volkswagen went into China in the 1980s. First foreign car maker in. They taught the Chinese how to build cars. Set up joint ventures. The deal was, we give you technology, you give us access to your massive market. German executives loved it. They made billions. They got arrogant. They thought, the Chinese will never catch up to our spaltness. They can copy but they can't create. April 2023. The Shanghai Auto Show. This was Germany's Sputnik moment. German executives flew to Shanghai, walked the show floor, and you could literally see the blood drain from their faces. They saw cars from BYD, NIO, XPeng, Li Auto. These weren't the cheap plastic knockoffs of 10 years ago. These cars were beautiful. They had better battery technology, LFP batteries that Germany had dismissed as inferior. They had software that worked like an iPad. And they cost 30% less than a Volkswagen. There's a famous story of a VW executive sitting in a BYD, playing with the infotainment system, and just quietly swearing to himself in German. He realized in that moment, we are not the teachers anymore. We are the dinosaurs. Let's talk about BYD specifically. Build your dreams. They make everything in-house. They own lithium mines. They make the batteries, the Blade battery. They make the chips. They make the cars. They even own the massive cargo ships that transport cars to Europe. They're vertically integrated in a way that makes German supply chains look like a chaotic jigsaw puzzle assembled by a drunk toddler. And now, the BYD Explorer No. 1, their massive car carrier ship, is docking in Bremerhaven, unloading thousands of EVs that are cheaper and often better than what the locals are making. In 2024 alone, German car production fell below 4 million units for the first time in decades, down from 5.6 million in 2017. Meanwhile, BYD increased sales by over 40%, reaching 4.2 million vehicles. They're now matching VW's core brand volume. The German engineers are obsolete here because they're fighting a war against a competitor who moves at China's speed, has unlimited government backing, and controls the raw materials from mine to showroom. Germany is trying to fight back with tariffs. The EU imposed duties up to 37.6% on Chinese EVs. But that's a band-aid on a severed limb. If your product is inferior and more expensive, a tariff doesn't fix the problem. It just delays the funeral. The hidden crisis is that Germany bet the farm on the combustion engine. And while they were polishing pistons to perfection, China cornered the market on batteries. If you study business history, you know about Kodak. They invented the digital camera in 1975. But they buried it. Why? Because they were making too much money selling film. They were too good at the old thing to survive the new thing. Germany is living through a national Kodak moment. There's a concept called the innovator's dilemma. When you're the absolute best in the world at something, like building internal combustion engines, you become terrified of doing anything that might cannibalize that success. German executives spent the last decade laughing at Elon Musk. They called him a fraud. They called Tesla Spaltmisware, a car held together by bad panel gaps. They dismissed Chinese cars as plastic toys. Why? Because looking down on them felt safer than admitting the game had changed. This arrogance permeates the engineering culture. It's the not invented here syndrome. If a solution comes from Silicon Valley or Shenzhen, it's viewed with suspicion. Take AI and data privacy. Germany treats data privacy not as a regulation but as a state religion. GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, is arguably Germany's most successful export of the last decade. While US and Chinese engineers are feeding massive datasets into AI models to train neural networks, German engineers are sitting in 3-hour meetings with legal compliance officers discussing whether an IP address counts as personal data. You cannot train world-class AI if you're legally terrified of data. So while the world moves toward an AI-driven economy, Germany is building a fortress of regulations. They're creating the safest, most private, most ethically compliant digital graveyard in the world. The German engineer is obsolete here because velocity matters more than perfection. In the digital age, being good enough, and fast beats being perfect and late. Every single time. Germany is still trying to be perfect. And they're arriving at the party after someone turned off the lights. So let's zoom out and look at the full picture. It's not just one thing. If it were only energy prices, they could subsidize it. If it were only software, they could buy it or hire consultants. If it were only demographics, they could fix immigration policy. But it's all of them at once. Technological shift. The move from hardware, Germany's strength, to software, Germany's weakness. Geopolitical suicide. The loss of cheap Russian energy that powered the entire industrial base. Energy costs in Germany are now 158% higher than in the US and 4 times what China pays. Demographic collapse. The rapid retirement of baby boomer engineers with literally nobody to replace them. Germany will lose 3.9 million working-age people by 2030. Bureaucratic paralysis. A government that loves paperwork more than progress, where a factory permit takes years while China does it in months. Competitive predator. China has gone from student to master, now producing 1 in 4 EVs sold in Europe. And the job massacre? Over 55,000 automotive jobs lost in 2025 alone. VW cutting 35,000 jobs by 2030. Ford closing Saar Louis. Bosch, ZF, Mercedes, all slashing workforces. This isn't a recession. This is a structural break. The era of German industrial dominance, an era that lasted from 1871 to roughly 2022, is effectively over. Does this mean Germany will become a third world country? No. It will remain wealthy, comfortable. A museum. A place where tourists come to see pretty castles and drive on the Autobahn if it's not under construction. But the dynamism? The power to shape the global future? That's moving east to China and west to America. The tragedy of the German engineer is that they did everything right according to the rules they were given. They followed the process. They measured the gaps. They optimized efficiency. They pursued perfection. But they optimized themselves for a world that no longer exists. So what's the lesson here for you? Whether you're an engineer, an investor, or just someone trying to navigate this chaotic economy, the lesson is that specialization is dangerous. Germany hyper-specialized in mechanical excellence. When the world needed mechanics, they were kings. Now that the world needs coders, software architects, and energy pragmatists, they're lost. Don't be a German engineer in your own life. Don't get so good at one specific thing that you refuse to see the world changing around you. Be adaptable. Be ugly and fast rather than perfect and slow. And for the love of all that is holy, don't build your entire economic model on cheap gas from a guy who invades his neighbors. A few bright spots exist. BMW has managed the EV transition better than others. Some German engineers are waking up, embracing software, rethinking approaches. But is it too little, too late? If you're a German engineer watching this, I genuinely want you to prove me wrong. Seriously. Build something messy. Break some rules. Tear up the fax machine. The world needs German engineering excellence, just not the 1990s version. The world needs German engineers who can move fast, embrace imperfection, and understand that a working product shipped today beats a perfect product shipped never. If you found this valuable, you need to watch my upcoming video on why the Japanese economy died and never came back. It's the prequel to what's happening in Germany right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to survive the economic shifts happening around us. I'll see you in the next one.